Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's Sixth Session. It's a time of the week where I get to dive deep into the minds of some of the most innovative individuals in the growth space. Excitingly, I have an incredible guest to introduce you to today, a man that is both metaphorical and literal rock star. Today's story is one of constant innovation, continuous learning, and relentless pursuit of growth. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a salesperson, or just someone seeking growth inspiration, you're in for a treat. He's someone who, historically, doesn't just break the mold, he creates an entirely new one, reshaping trajectories and driving entirely new market segments. Today's guest has reshaped the landscape of sales strategies and team building in the businesses lucky enough to have him on the roster, while also driving rapid revenue growth in every position he's held. He's led sales teams at some of Canada's best-loved startups and now advises the next generation of emerging sales SaaS. In his current role, today's guest masterminded 10x revenue growth in just his first 12 months. His innovation and drive to build revenue-generating teams has been the catalyst. He's an advisor, a sales leader, and by all accounts, a very talented musician. And today, I'm excited to introduce you to Evan Santa, Vice President of Sales at CommerceBear. I first had the pleasure of meeting Evan in Kitchener, Ontario, just before the world went into complete lockdown. My first thoughts, he's a visionary sales leader with a team that genuinely values his support. But what became apparent is that he also has a knack for spotting and capitalizing on unexplored market segments. His role in taking Vidyard down market, a move that uncovered a multi-million-dollar growth lever, pays testament to that. He's built multiple growth teams from scratch and has consistently managed to challenge the status quo, pushing the boundaries of conventional sales process and generating millions in revenue, which is why I'm keen to talk to him. If you're passionate about transforming sales, performance, and driving growth, then brace yourself for the next 30 minutes. As always, our conversations will probably not be concise, but hopefully engaging and obviously full of insight. And of course, it's completely unfiltered, which is part of the charm and also the risk for both Evan and I. Joining us from Thunder Bay in Ontario, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Evan Santa, VP of Sales at CommerceBear. Evan, welcome.
Thanks, Rich. I'm really excited to be here, and that was one hell of an intro. I'm going to need a copy of that afterwards. I think that's just LinkedIn bio. You just rewrote it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much.
Do you know, it is honestly my favorite part of doing these is like how far can I take these? And I think I peaked when I referred to you as a metaphorical and literal rock star. That was like my favorite part of the entire thing. Anyway,
Well,
first up,
somebody on your team's a hell of a writer, and half of it's bullshit. No, I appreciate it.
We're in marketing.
I'm excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of the show, and so I believe I was voluntold to join this, but I jumped on it. So thank you for having me.
You are the first shout out that we've had who has almost immediately come back and said, "Hey, I'm up for it." Normally, I have to go chasing, so I appreciate that. So first up, how was Q2 for you and the CommerceBear team?
It was record quarter, baby. It was huge, but it was probably one of the it will be to date the most memorable quarter I've ever had as a sales leader, or even as just part of a team. Because our Q1 wasn't very good. Q4 last year, we bounced back after a tough Q3 when the markets all went crazy and everybody started losing their mind thinking it was all coming to an end. And it didn't. But Q2, we buckled up, and it was just a no quit attitude across the team after a really, really difficult Q1. Nobody quit. Nobody stopped. I had one AE who closed $0 in Q1 and ended up at the top of the board in Q2. So there was just so many success stories across the team. And it was one of those really, really proud moments as a sales leader. But I also know that everybody on the team had their own level of being proud of themselves and proud of the people next to them. So it was just an absolute success.
Congrats. Do you think that success in Q2 is internally driven or externally driven? By that I mean, did you tweak things and kind of reposition or try something new internally?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's the market factors where you had an elongation of like how long it's taken to close things, and now we're starting to see those drop in and being more consistent again? I think, what was it that you leaned?
It's a great question. And it's a great question. These are the things that as leaders, we always need to be able to articulate. And I think a leader is full of shit, frankly, if they don't say that there are external factors. Absolutely external factors at play, in the sense that buyer sentiment we're so closely at CommerceBear, we're so closely tied to consumer demand. Our buyers won't buy unless people are buying from them. So we came off a trade show in late April and it was all smiles because during this trade show, which is really a buyer's market for our customers, they were hitting their targets 3 days into the market. So all of a sudden, it became much easier for our champions to go to their decision makers, their VPs, their C levels, their owners, their presidents, and say, hey, we want to invest in ecom. And when sales are coming in, it's really easy to have that conversation with your boss, right? As opposed to when sales aren't happening and everyone says, no, we're not spending right now. But that with that external factor, the internal factors, we basically buried for the entire quarter any additional training, which sounds kind of crazy, but I do believe that when you are back up against the wall, you have to just focus on fundamentals. Like, we're not going to be having these training sessions about what's going to happen next quarter and next year and further development. I was very clear with the team, like, we're putting that all on pause, and it's all about pipeline and being on the phone with your potential customers. And we spent so much time getting hyper scientific with about 50 deals that we called our key deals, of just like deals that we thought had a high likelihood to close, to really align with our prospects on why they're buying, developing a strong ROI with them. And then the other piece as well was we really knew that it was do or die, in the sense of this was a quarter that we needed to rebound. So the whole team just buckled up and we were selling into all hours of the evening, weekends, so forth. Again, really proud moment. We also did a major pricing change. That was huge as well.
Nice. So it sounds like there's a bunch of stuff that's come through to that, but at the crux of it, it's about kind of focus and the team being able to grind out the win.
Yeah, and you have to have everybody laser focused to understand that, and the collaboration from the BDRs to the AEs to the leaders, people jumping on calls, like everybody was just kind of doing this with each other, trying to help support deals. AEs were co-selling together, not worrying about who's getting commission, but like, if I can help you, I'll jump on the deal with you. Let's go do this thing together. I had AEs who were well past their own target, but because we had a stretch goal after we hit our target, they were trying to slam every single deal in the quarter, even though they could have been selling into Q3.
How much of that, so that mentality that we're trying to stretch, we need to hit this quarter, how much of that do you let, or do you think your AEs project onto like the end customer? Like, how much do they share?
Not much. There's a certain, this is where we get into the art of it, right? Not necessarily the science, but my methodology is you want to align with your prospects so that they understand that you're there to help them come to a decision, whether that decision is no, like no to CommerceBear or whatever product you're selling. If you can do that successfully and have your buyer but truly believe that you are moral to want the best for them, not the best for you, that is true alignment. From there, it is okay, and most of your buyers, if not all, understand that you're commission based. And some of your buyers will open the door to talk about, like, hey, let's get you the commission on this deal. Like, let's help each other out. Once they open that door, that's okay. But I've seen some pretty horrendous stuff in my time of like, I need this deal. You can't walk on it now after all the work I put into it. Like, I think we have to be very, very sober to the fact that this has nothing to do with us as salespeople and everything to do with our potential buyer and their business. And there's so much risk for them when they purchase something if it goes wrong. So the best thing that you can do is align to that.
So I did a 6 session with a sales coach called Peter Buttons a couple of months back, and his mentality around sales and sales coaching is that we should be positioning ourselves as salespeople to be coaching the prospect to success. Like, we are there to help them, we are there to educate them and help them get to, like, and you say a decision, could be yes, could be no. Obviously we want the yes, but actually the quicker we can get them to the decision, the better we can all move on if it's a negative. Yeah. So what is CommerceBear and what is your role?
So I'm the VP of Sales here at CommerceBear, joined in the summer of 2021, so just 2 years ago, almost to the month. I was brought in essentially a little bit early to the business, in the sense of like where we were as a business at that stage, like pre-seed. It's kind of rare to hire your VP of Sales before you really get your sales motion rolling. But it actually proved out to be a really, really, really strong strategy, because the business and the CEO didn't spend a year and a half to 2 years spinning their tires, trying to hire AEs with no playbook, trying to figure out how the heck do we get this thing off the ground? How do we price, repackage, drop comp plans, figure out our outbound strategy, our inbound strategy, all that good stuff. So because again, as you mentioned in the introduction, I've just had this opportunity over the last near 10 years now to build these teams at these types of companies, these software companies. I was able to come in and basically take the foundations of the playbook that I've been creating for almost 10 years and put that all to work in a really, really fast motion. So essentially, I was hired to build the go-to-market efforts, and this is where we are today. And we can talk a little bit more about that. CommerceBear itself, we are essentially an e-commerce enablement platform specifically designed for furniture manufacturers. So what does that mean? Everybody knows who Wayfair is. If you're watching TV at all, if you have cable television, you're going to see them. Kelly Clarkson, let's go. But what's happened is Wayfair essentially is just a website. They don't hold inventory. They have furniture suppliers and home goods suppliers who make furniture and other goods and then essentially list them on this website. Think about it like eBay. From there, a modern consumer can come online and of course purchase that. All Wayfair is doing is connecting the buyer with the manufacturer. These manufacturers typically sold to the retail environments. Companies like The Brick, Bob's Furniture, brick and mortar. But because online, as we know, buyers are migrating online, and again, I'm saying migrating because home goods is kind of behind the curve when it comes to e-com. Only now are people feeling comfortable enough to buy a $10,000 high-end made-to-order leather sofa online. But now people are doing that because they're getting so confident with these platforms and these e-commerce sites. But the problem that we're filling, the gap where we fit in to all of this, is it's an absolute nightmare for a furniture manufacturer to get 10,000 products onto Wayfair and then onto Overstock and then onto Home Depot and then onto Walmart and then onto Bed Bath & Beyond and Kohl's and Costco. And they want to be everywhere because that's the way that you're going to, the bigger footprint you have. So we essentially help them publish. We take their data, we optimize their data, and then we push it to said sites. And it's an extremely valuable tool for these prospects. And one of the really exciting, you know me, Rich, as a SMB seller selling an AOV of $5,000 in a one call close. We're doing that with mid-market, very, very expensive software, scratching the surface of $100K a year. And some of these deals close as quick as 1 to 2 calls.
Wow. What's the secret sauce between closing mid-market in 1 to 2 calls?
Is realizing that they're not different. Like, again, and we're going to talk more about this, but like whether you're closing a $100,000 deal or a $1 deal, it's the same. It's the same. And I think one of the things that we see account executives do all the time, or sales leaders or businesses do, is as soon as the deal value starts to go up, they go, oh, precious, precious, precious. We need to treat it differently. No, you have a buyer who has a problem. There's a value to that problem if we can fix it and solve for it. And also too, with the work that we're doing, it's not just a software that we send to them, they sign in and all of a sudden everything's fixed. We're doing so much data management, data migration. There's a lot of human work on our end, human touch. So there's a certain overhead that we have that the business that is purchasing us understands that. And then we're helping them fill this void. See, a lot of the businesses that we sell to, this is why I'm so excited about the go-to-market motion and even just the business positioning of CommerceBear, is that even the most sophisticated manufacturers that we get onto our platform or that we show our platform, they go, we have a team of 5 people, but we're still up to here. And we've only ever been able to get our entire catalog onto Wayfair, Overstock, and Home Depot, but we have like 10% of our items on Lowe's. We have another 10% on Kohl's, and we want to get our 100% catalog there, but we just don't have the manpower. And I got to go hire another 5 people in order to solve this problem. So again, when you start to connect those dots, this doesn't have to be a 6-month sales cycle. Sometimes they are, but our sales cycle on average is just under 30 days.
Nice. Okay, so just we'll go into more of that in a bit, but coming back to you, how did you get into tech sales? Walk me through like the early parts of your career.
by accident. So I created my own business in university. It was a landscaping company, but it was still my own business. I had to cold prospect, go knock on doors, and I used to always say, like, an 18-year-old, 6 foot tall male with a wicked haircut knocking on the door of a senior citizen, they're like, get the hell off my porch. That's one of the hardest sales I used to have to make, is like, no, let me like cut your lawn and dig up your garden, and you'll pay me for it. But I ended up building about a clientele of about 500 people and made a lot of money, and pretty much yeah, was able to make bank on the summers all the way up until when the snow would fall. um, that was something that was big because I had to do all the financing, budgeting, and you have to learn that all from scratch. And yeah, it's just grass, but you're learning the foundations of how to run a business. From there, as you mentioned, and you let that cat out of the bag, I used to play in rock bands. I mean, we used to have to do all the logistics for our tours across Canada. We used to have to figure out where we're staying, what we're going to make, chase for some of our payments, because you're playing in some of the dive bars and that kind of thing. And then they go, well, we're going to change what we're paying you at the end of the night. And you have to have those negotiations. And then really when I moved to Toronto, that's how I got into software sales. And it was really by accident. Grew up in Thunder Bay, Ontario. There's no software here. Actually, a lot of the people now that I moved back go like, what the hell do you do? So like, you build computers? No, don't build computers. But
Yeah.
I kind of just fell into it. I mean, really, I was looking for employment when I was in Toronto, and then that's how I got tied into a company like Touch Bistro. And there was a very methodical individual who looked at my resume. I had been in the workforce for about 7 years prior to that, because I worked full time throughout university. I did it through like night school and online courses. I didn't like the idea of not doing anything and just taking 18 hours of classes a week for 4 years. Um, but he looked at my resume, a guy named Twandin. He was running sales and all go to market at Touch Bistro at the time. We were 30 employees, and I walked in there, and everybody else was walking me out of the room with Thunder Bay all over my resume, no employment in Toronto. And he looked at it and he's like, you've ran your own business. You used to play in rock bands. I can understand. Like, he saw the value in that, of me being a very well-rounded, business-minded individual. And then I worked in mechanical engineering for about 6 years. So I understood numbers and how to build things and that kind of thing. So that's how I got into it. It was kind of by accident. They told me to dress down. I was interning at the Toronto Star at the time, and they told me to dress down. They're like, this is a software company. This is like 2016, right? They go, this is a software company. We don't want you to overdress. And you know what I did, Rich? I put on my best suit, white collar, had a short haircut at the time, white collar, pressed shirt. And I walked in there not overdressed, but I'm coming from Toronto Star. So I basically told them, I'm like, when they're like, oh, you were supposed to underdress. I said, I understand, but I'm coming from my office. I'm not going to change clothes. So I walked in there looking like a rock star. CEO comes to meet me. He's dressed the exact same. Alex Brody gives me a handshake, and I wanted to stand out. And it wasn't to stand out and be dressed all tacky, but I walked in there looking like I knew what I was doing, right?
Nice. I like it. So you've built multiple sales teams from scratch, and it's not always an easy thing to do. So this is one of the, like, quite often when we work with businesses, they are scaling their sales teams. They can be difficult hires. Structuring those teams is an art. What's your approach to forming high performing sales teams?
Yep. Great question. That's the $1 million question. I think the thing is for businesses that are trying to do that, you really need a methodology and playbook in place. Like, you can't just go hire top tier talent, or what you think is top tier talent. Or like, I think a lot of businesses get really excited about resumes. Like, oh, this person's work, and they get very logo crazy. I think in when I was at Touch Bistro in my early days in software in 2016, 2017, everybody got excited about what school somebody went to. Oh, like I'd see the VP of sales be like, I went to that school. I like this guy. Who cares? And now what I find is there's a lot of people get very excited about logos, like the company that a potential employee worked at. Who cares? Who cares? And furthermore, unless there's a parallel to to the type of customer that we're selling to. But like if they worked at a notable tech company, like whatever. Like, I think the big thing that you need to do as a business or as a sales leader is you need to have a playbook in place, and it's got to be tested and validated before you throw bodies at it. Like you can't just hire a team and go, they interviewed so well, these people are going to be great, and then put them on the phones and have everybody selling in a totally different manner. You have to have a very methodical playbook. You have to have plays for every single scenario. You have to have your staging together, and you have to understand how your buyer wants to buy. From there, you actually don't need, and I've proven this time and time again, you don't need wildly tenured people who have sold for years, who want a massive base to come in and do it. What you need is people who are very, very hungry to take the next step in their career. They're very, very excited about the opportunity to not only earn, but learn. And that's been my recipe for success time and time again.
So you mentioned before, like, so your positioning, so you CommerceBear bringing you in when they did was probably the abnorm for a company at that stage. They did that because they were getting all of the knowledge, all of the experience. You knew how to build playbooks, you knew how to build teams. But you were talking about before, so with a company, don't build the team until you've got the playbook. If CommerceBear or a business, obviously it's worked out for CommerceBear, but if you were advising a startup now and they don't have those playbooks, how would you suggest somebody start that journey? Is it that the CEO has to kind of focus in on that? Like, who builds that to get everything started?
Yes, great question. I think, again, so actually it was just this week, I met a very, very impressive co-founder who has built an unbelievable outbound focused go-to-market engine. The way that he speaks about all the different metrics in SaaS, like, right away, it's the same as auto mechanics, right? Like, it's like you open up the hood of a car and you can tell who's talking shit and who knows their shit. This guy knew his stuff, right? He's going through all the different conversion metrics and he's not faking it. He's deep into it. I think if you can truly say as a founder or CEO or president to say, like, I actually know how to do this, or I'm almost there and I'm going to learn as I go, then run with it. Go build out your playbook, test your pricing model, and sell, and make that repeatable before you hire. Now, if you feel like you're at a loss, you have to go and invest. And what I mean by invest is don't burn your time hiring account executives before you hire somebody who knows what they're doing. Your account executive is set up for failure right out of the gate, because they're going to come in, and account executives for the most part haven't built playbooks. So they're just going to take the way that they were taught how to sell and then bring it there and try to fit a square peg into a round hole. So what I would advise anybody in the startup space who hasn't built that yet, go find some advisors. Go find some outside consultants. I had a history. That's actually how I ended up at CommerceBear, because I was pitching the CEO to come do the same thing with him in 2018, 2019, or maybe it was 2020. I can't remember. But we never got the deal done. It wasn't the right time for them. But what I was basically doing is I was consulting with about 4 different organizations, all pre-seed, in helping them build out their comp plans, their hiring profiles, their playbooks, asking them about, how they're selling today, and helping them build that out. And that's a very inexpensive way to save 6-8 months worth of time.
So if you could build the perfectly formed sales team, what does it look like? Full funnel, SDRs, AEs, total self-serve. What does it look like?
Yeah, great question. So there's so much wrong with self-service. I think it's just like that just gets over-indexed. We always have these hot, and they're always acronyms too, but it's like you had self-service, that was like the hot thing, right? That everybody talked about it. Then you had PLG, right? Product-led growth. Everyone's got to do product-led growth. Makes so much sense. That's how buyers want it. Then there was ABM, account-based marketing. Oh, now we got to go wide on accounts. We need to build out a whole team for ABM. Now, what's the one? Do you know what the one is? Come on, you know it. What is it?
RevOps.
RevOps is huge, and partnerships. Oh, the traditional way of selling is dead. We need partnerships. We just have to plug in with all these companies. And you know better than anybody that partnerships is really fucking hard. It's really hard to get that going. And I saw Rob Sale commenting. I hope he's watching right now, because that you and him are a couple guys that know how to do it well. But I think the model that I really like, and again, it just is so dependent on what you're selling. You can't do product-led growth if your product is difficult to adopt. You'll die. You can't do self-service if it's a difficult decision to make and there's a lot of risk. Self-service works for Netflix. It works for streaming services, right? And even then, look at Spotify, how many free users they have versus paid users and how hard it is to convert them. But anyways, I really, really like the inbound model over the outbound model. And that's funny because we are 100% outbound today with CommerceBear with a little bit of organic traffic, because the problem that we're solving at CommerceBear is something that our prospective buyer is suffering from. So it's not easy to book a meeting, but when we do connect to the right person, it's very seamless to have them go, I want to talk to you. I'll take the meeting. This is resonating with me. But I believe that the inbound model is the future. The reason being is, as we know, what's the first thing that everybody does when they want to buy something? Whether you're looking to buy a new set of coffee mugs for your house, a car, or software, you hit Google, right? So that's where companies need to be. They need to be telling their story. So my favorite model is the thought leadership model, where you start to become the source of truth for information around all things in your industry, and allow people to organically go through that channel to learn about what problems you truly solve for. From there, you have high close rates. You have people who come in who have already identified a problem, who say, I need to talk to you. You get transparent with your pricing. You have a transparent and very customer focused sales process. That to me is a winning formula for the near term future.
How do you balance? And we see this. So we work with a lot of sales team, like implementing CRM, obviously. So we quite often see a challenge with external teams, and also sometimes internally with our teams, when you are servicing inbound leads. Sometimes when you need to fill the gap, there is I don't want to say laziness, but there is I don't want to have to pick up the phone because I'm used to dealing with the inbound. So how do you get that balance? Do you split the teams? Do you just try not to have any outbound? Like, how do you make that function work long term, and you don't just end up with a bunch of salespeople sat there going, well, I'm not selling because I'm not getting leads?
So I have to say it, but you just have to get rid of the people that don't want to pick up the phone. This is a game where you pick up the phone. This is a game of communication. Like, that to me, I can never wrap my head around. I just can't. You, in sales, you pick this up, you make money. That's it. So we actually had a conversation as a sales team yesterday. And we were doing a deal review, walking through like soup to nuts, how it was sourced, how the account was first sourced, how the business development rep broke through, how it was passed off, and how we closed this deal. Deal was closed for $40,000 ARR. It was closed in 29 days from the opportunity being created. There was so much creativity throughout the entire process. But one of the biggest things that we found is that phone was massive, and we could have shortened the deal cycle had we gotten onto a text message basis later in the deal cycle earlier. From there, we use Vidyard over here, Rich, as you could probably imagine, which is an absolute superpower for a salesperson. And we're always talking about the tactics of how to speed up a deal cycle, to your point earlier of figuring out, is this a yes? Are we continuing to evaluate? Or is it a no? And that's great, close, lost, and I move on. It's all about time management and communication. From there, I had a rep who she had a proposal walkthrough. We always do like our proposal walkthroughs or our ROI walkthroughs on video. We don't just send them the slides. It's like we do a walkthrough. So two reasons. One, so that in their busy world, after talking to a sales rep and hearing the pitch, 2 weeks later, when they want to actually sit down and be like, oh, right, I got to review this. We want it to come from our mouths in our articulation and communication of why it's priced as it is, what value they're going to see, and so forth. But the second powerful reason is that when they watch the video, we get notified. So deal didn't have next steps. It was something that we're essentially chasing. They go to watch the proposal video 3 weeks after the initial call, and sales rep picks up the phone immediately. She drops everything because she sees the real-time notification come in and says prospect ABC is watching your video. She called them as they're watching the video. And of course the prospect goes, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I'm watching your thing right now. Oh, weird. No, a lot of times we call it out and we say, we got a notification that you did. So I wanted to extend myself to you. Do you have any questions? Deal's back in the calendar. They're coming to a decision and we're moving it forward. But again, you take sales reps in a world where they don't want to do that and they don't understand what that's going to do to even their own personal income. It'll never happen. It'll never work. And if you have an entire culture that doesn't want to pick up the phone as sales reps, you got a major problem. Like
So
it's so FUBAR.
You've segued beautifully into my next question. So when hiring for sales roles, what are the key characteristics you're looking for?
Competitive with one's self. So really quickly, I'll try not to rant on this because I know we're coming close to time, and I'm sure you have a couple other questions. But you remember bro culture? You remember that was a thing in software? Yeah, of course, right? And that got over-indexed as well. Software has such a knack to do that. It's whiplash. There's always something new, and we're going to over-index the shit out of it. So bro culture, anything that was kind of tied into that, nobody really thought, is this truly like bad or good, or is this really like toxic? One of the things that got thrown out from the hiring profile was competitiveness. And it's actually so sad that was tied to some type of gender, I think, because competition is not, you know where I'm going with that, in the sense of trying to be moral with it, right? Like there's no gender tied to competitiveness. But it was thrown out with bro culture. It's like, no, we don't want competitors. Okay, that's bro culture. Then enters the pandemic. The reps that succeeded during 2020, when we all were no longer on the sales floor with our managers watching or our peers watching, the reps that succeeded, and I saw this on my team at Vidyard of near 20 people, were all competitors, male, female, whatever gender that they represented. Because, and what I also noticed is that these individuals, whether they were ex-athletes or even just competitive from a business sense or a personal sense, that's who was successful. So in this new world, I find the people that fail are the ones that don't have goals and don't hold themselves to a high bar. I don't care what my manager says, this is where I want to be. And I have some of my reps where I go, here's your quota. And they go, yeah, I know that's my quota, Evan, but this is my target. This is where I want to be. And they have it written down on the wall next to them. And they'll show me, look at how close I am. 2 more deals.
So how do you find that in a recruitment process though? So how do you find those people who are competitive?
Well, here's a fun fact, Rich, and this was not something that I sought out to do, but everybody on my account executive team right now are all ex D1 athletes. So there's that. I've seen ex-athletes do really, really well because it's already ingrained in them from a young adult age to get up when no one's watching at 6 a.m. to get to the gym, to then get to class, so that I don't disqualify people from my process if they're not an ex-athlete, but I'm finding that to be a really great recipe for success. The other is a story, not necessarily success, but a story of striving for success. So you take some of the youngest individuals that you can bring onto a software team or tenured. It's like, it's okay to fail, but I want to see that you were grinding your teeth to try to get to whatever the next goal was, which is to maybe move across the country, maybe get a job here. What was the adversity and what did you do with it? Somebody on the team that I hired was actually kicked out of the United States during the pandemic, Canadian citizen, but was going to school in the United States. And then after school, she was working in the States and she got kicked out of the States and sent to Canada. From there, I saw on her resume that she worked at Lululemon, which is really like, she already had built the beginning foundations of her career. She didn't have to work at Lululemon. I'm like, why did you work at Lululemon? She's like, well, I was trying to find my next role in software sales, but I wasn't going to sit at home and waste my time just doing that. That's the type, like, that's the secret sauce. People who go, who have no ego. And that's also too, Rich. Let's talk about picking up the phones really quick. AEs, the reason that they don't pick up the phone, a lot of AEs get up to here, like in their career, and they go, I don't need to pick up the phone anymore. Bring me the leads. Bring me the leads. Where your best sales reps, even if they're 20 years into the game, they still make cold calls. They're like, this is how I build my business. And if I get leads from the BDRs, SDRs, inbound marketing partnerships, great, but I'm still going to build my own business.
So I had a great chat with Ryan Frampton last week from SalesQ. He shouted you out as being strategic in how you think about sales and business dev. Can you talk about your sales methodology, how it's changed over the years, and why you think it's so successful? Because obviously you have a track record of nailing it. So why is your methodology working?
I appreciate that. The biggest thing, and I'm very proud of it as well. So thank you, Rich. The biggest thing that I've sought out to do, and again, when we talk about how I got into Touch Bistro, I didn't come from a traditional sales background, and then we were selling to restaurateurs. So it was really quick. And one of the biggest things that we did to get Touch Bistro off the ground when we were 5 sales reps, and I was the first person hired in business development to build out that function, was we basically didn't look at, and it was amazing to work under Tuan's leadership at the time because he wasn't trying to force a traditional playbook down our throats. Then there was a guy there who I'm very close with after what we did there was Ross Morgan, and he was the same thing. It's like we were just trying to sell to people. We weren't trying to look at this and look at sales stages and what's the extra criteria here. It's like we were like, how do we get into the world and get in front of our buyer and then sell the way that they want to buy? And one of the things that we started realizing was myself and Ross sat down and we saw a conversion rate where we would have an inbound lead, book a demo, and then say, okay, do you want to meet with my account executive, Rich? Does tomorrow work for you? Tomorrow's Friday. I'm off Friday. Tomorrow's a big day for us. Okay, how about Monday, Tuesday? Okay, Monday, Tuesday. And then they wouldn't show up. You have those no-shows. So we developed the hot transfer. It was like, Rich, you were on our website and you just clicked get a demo. I called you in less than 3 minutes. You're still in front of your computer, right? Let's transfer you. We'd hit hold. Person would stand up, go, I got one. AE's like, send it here. We transfer it over, and a lot of those deals would close within 27 minutes or less of submitting a demo request. So the idea is let's stop trying to create hurdles and friction for our buyer, and let's make it as seamless as possible for them to purchase. The next piece in alignment to that is we care about our brands more than our customer does not give a shit that we wear t-shirts and go on company trips and have free lunch. They don't give a shit about that. They're looking to solve their problems, and they really don't care about the stickers and the swag. They're looking for impact. So you have to stop talking about yourself and your business and what money you raised and all this stuff, and just focus on the impact that they will see. And you focus that as quickly as you can on the call. They will then tell you, and we see this happen all the time, they will then tell you at the end. You don't have to train your AE to always ask for next steps, because if you execute that correctly for the first half of the call, showing them the value that they will see in just continuing to talk to you. A lot of times our prospects book calls with us. They go, okay, this is awesome. Thank you for all this. Please send me that in an email. Can we meet on Wednesday? Which is really exciting. So it's about aligning with the buyer, and I think also too a lot of sales methodologies and systems are designed for the business. You need to design it for your customer. And if you continue to tweak it for how your customer wants to buy and how they want to, how they essentially want to gain knowledge, that's your winning formula.
It's funny actually, because and I totally agree with everything you're saying. So like, we're selling to humans, we're trying to remove friction. Well, I mean, where you start to see successful sales processes. I think as businesses, we quite often forget about the frictions we are also putting on our salespeople. We want you to fill in this. We want you to follow this methodology. We want you to like update the CRM with this data and this process. It's a lot, and I think we're guilty of it as well. We're rolling out new MarTech stack elements every 6 months. There's something else that's coming in. Let's try this. Let's build this. It's a huge amount of cognitive load, at least, if not friction for the salesperson. So I think where we see successful sales teams working is where they've looked at how the customer wants to buy, back to your original point. They've realize that they are selling to humans. So we are trying to have FaceTime, voice time. And by FaceTime, I'm talking about things like Vidyard, Zoom calls.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it is a lot harder to say no to somebody when you can actually see their face. But that is very human. But also making it easy for the salespeople to actually do their job. You don't want your salespeople spending loads of time filling in spreadsheets of data or different variables in the CRM. You need to get them back in front of those people so they can be human to human.
Oh, absolutely. The sales methodology that I've created is really come to be titled the emotional sale. And that's where we look at the fluidity of sales. And actually, I have a very, very unconventional staging system where things can actually go backwards in stage. And that's another whole can of worms that I could get into with you. But I think there's just a disconnect between the traditional band, medic, all this different stuff where we're forecasting deals because we've checked all these boxes. But meanwhile, we haven't thought about the emotional risk that our buyer is having because they bought the last two softwares that they asked their president to sign off on, failed, and they lost 100 G's. Like, these are the things that we need to uncover on deals, to truly understand, to truly start to forecast it and start to understand what deals are worth our time and what deals have major risk that we need to call it with our prospect and understand if this is something that truly has legs or not. I always say to myself, Rich, and I caution everybody on my sales team, is when we meet weekly to go through every single opportunity in our pipeline. And that is also too, if you're not doing that yet with your company or your team, you gotta start. Because if you're not sitting there talking about the business that you have in front of you on a weekly basis to understand how each week you can move that forward, like, you're not helping yourself.
Are you doing that collectively or is that a one-to-one?
Collectively, as an entire team, everybody has to present to the entire sales org their opportunities, what they're doing with them, where their holdups are, and it's meant to be a value share, so that when we're on the call, all of a sudden Rich goes, "Hey, Evan, I actually had the exact same holdup, the exact same objection with the deal that I closed. This is how I overcame it. Here's a little nugget for you that might help." So it's great because you start to have a value share happen across the screen. It's really great. But at the end of the day, you're managing all that business. You got to be on top of it. You got to be focused on it. And you have to understand that these deals, when you're sitting in a room, and again, I always caution AEs to say, you might be sitting here talking about this deal that hasn't responded to you in 3 weeks. And you're going like, "Oh yeah, it's a 75K deal. I'm really excited. They just haven't gotten back to me." It's like, do you think they're thinking about you? You're talking about them every single Monday in front of your team. And I bet you they've already written you off. That is a salesperson's worst nightmare and the biggest problem. And the problem too, like one of the actual risks with this meeting that we hold every year, every month, every week, is sometimes AEs feel like they need to bring things to the table. So it's creating a safe space to say, I don't want to hear about your pipe dreams around a deal that you're hoping you can close because you're excited about it. Is your prospect excited about it? That's what we need to figure out. And again, you start to inflate a team. When we were at Vidyard, it's like near 20 people globally, and I was on that call, and everybody had like a 5-minute window to go through their ops. It's pretty easy to start to see who's faking it till they make it and who's actually finding that true alignment. And it's a really beautiful thing when somebody strives for greatness, that they go from faking it till they make it a little bit, and then all of a sudden you start to see them providing a true forecast.
So this is one of the questions I wanted to dig into most. But so you played a leading role in taking Vidyard down market at a time where every SaaS company under the sun was pushing the other way. What was the rationale? How did you balance the risk versus reward when you were presenting that back to the C-suite? Because that is against conventional wisdom at the time, because everybody was pushing up. In the tech companies that we were partnered with, everybody was like, how do we go upstream? How do we go upstream? And then all of a sudden you've gone the other way.
Yes. So yeah, there's a lot there. So first and foremost, SaaS companies are so strange in the sense that everybody wants to be something so special. They want to be like, we want to change the industry. We want to be, you know exactly where I'm going with that. So yes, everybody wants to go up market because they want to talk about closing the $250,000 deals. They want to talk about, they want to ring the bell, right? All that good stuff. But at the end of the day, we're all just businesses. And businesses are about revenue and driving value for our customer with whatever we sell, whether it's bubblegum or software. So if you have multiple millions to gain fairly quickly as a business down market, why the hell would you ignore that? So that was the rhetoric and the, again, business focused. Doesn't matter if you're cutting lawns, how many can you cut in a day? That's what I used to do when I was 17, 18 years old. I'd go, if I could cut 4, 6 down this street in a day, that's like $250 cash. What if I cut 9, right? It's all about volume. So I've always been looking at business as per volume and just multiplying the deal size, right? So when I presented it to the C-suite and the executive team at Vidyard, I did tell my wife that I am either coming home with a promotion or without a job. There was massive risk in it because in order to get my pitch across, I had to have a very, very frank conversation with Michael, the CEO. So I asked him to go for a beer and asked him if I could speak freely. And then I told him what I saw. I told him what I know and, or what I thought I knew, my theories. And I think because I took the gloves off and had such a frank conversation with him, he's like, let's do it. He's like, let's get you in front of the executive team, give them the same pitch, and let's see if they're all in. And if they're all in and we get 100% vote, we're going to do it. And that's really what incepted that team that was termed at the time Sales Labs, which is now Emerging Markets at Vidyard, which took the company down market. And that was happening in alignment with a bit of a PLG strategy that started to come into fruition really, really quickly with HubSpot. And that's really how you and I met. So
full circle.
Yeah, full circle, right? But the big thing that I was trying to say was that I could change the culture of selling at Vidyard. But this is the vehicle to do it. So it was less about going down market. It was more about not cannibalizing the enterprise sale. And I partnered with Michael Litt and reported to him for the better part of a year, where him and I were basically using this down market, emerging market, that it was revenue that nobody was really touching. So it's not like we were taken away from the other teams. But what I was trying to show was a higher level of accountability within the sales org. And we saw a lot of turnover during this time. There was a lot of friction internally at the org, but it was a good friction to push the organization forward into a new era of a high level of accountability and execution amongst the sales org.
So the two questions around that. So the first is, you quite often a SMB team would be considered the entry point to graduate to an enterprise team.
Sure.
Like you've got to cut your teeth. Was that the progression that it became, or was it, this is like the rockstar team, you're in the labs, you're in the skunk works, you're experimenting, you're doing the cool thing? Or did you become the feeder team to the more established parts of the org?
So that was actually the break in the org during the time. And the reason that was the break in the org is because there was not only a different methodology and culture within my sales team but to the enterprise team. Like the cultures were very different. Individuals were butting heads like you wouldn't believe. Like it was almost like like two football teams at a time, where the two individuals from the different high school football team would run into each other and then like have words with each other. Like it was pretty ridiculous at times, and we were trying to mitigate a lot of that with amongst leadership, but it was still happening with a lot of the account executives because they had a lot of pride in what they were doing. But the problem is that even though it was SMB and the AOV was lower, a number of the reps on the team who were seen as a potential to go to the enterprise team were closing more revenue per quarter than some of the reps who have been there for 5 years. They were outselling them. So they're like, why the hell would I go? Like the AEs were saying, in this system, why the hell would I go up there? Sure, I get a bigger base, but I'm going to make way less in commission. And I'm not interested in doing that. And I had some reps who were like, well, maybe I can be the one to make that leap and then try to change the culture there and try to bring in here over there. after my time, after I left, I think me leaving was actually helpful to the organization and I'm actually still very, very close with a number of individuals over there, Michael Litt, Dan Wardle, and a number of others. But I think me leaving was actually a good thing. It kind of allowed for a new era. And then they eventually were able to break through that and start to progress the reps from the emerging teams onto SMB team, into mid-market and so forth.
So the other question that I had off the back of it though is what you were presenting back to Vidyard wasn't just a sales motion, because there are repercussions post sale there, because you're increasing the volume. These are smaller things. So how do they get onboarded versus the enterprise clients? So it's not just we're going to start selling in a different way to a different market. It's actually we have to change how, well, presumably, we have to start changing the ways that we are servicing these clients as well.
Yes.
So how as a salesperson do you approach that part of the conversation?
Well, here's the answer. Why wouldn't we? Like when I joined Vidyard, we had in and around 400, 500 customers. And the metric that we wanted, this was in 2018, we joined Vidyard and we had in around 500 customers, and we had this big number thing on the wall that was our customer count. So every time a deal closed, the number would go up. And we wanted to get to 1,000. So we wanted to go from 500 to 1,000. When I opened this team up, we did 1,500 new customers in 24 months. So the best part about, see, Vidyard is priced in a really great way. There's a platform, there's a MarTech platform, and then there's a per user seat. The theory that I had that we proved out was, let's stop turning down these companies like CommerceBear who want to buy 2 seats because they just built their sales team. You know how many seats CommerceBear is now? We're about 25. Multiply that by 1,500 customers in the SMB space. Now, some of those companies I'm sure that we sold years ago have failed. They've closed up shop. But some of them I'm sure we sold 1 seat, 2 seat, 10 seats to, who are now probably approaching 50 out to 100. Because we were sold to these high growth companies that became part of the sales system. Now, how do you service them? Yes. That was always the question. And we had a really, really fantastic leader in the customer success side who took that on in strides, and Roger Ord. And he basically said, like, this is how we're going to run it. I'm going to put somebody over here. We're going to have to try to do some self-service stuff. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But yeah, we had to change how we service them. But at the end of the day, if it's so hard, going full circle back to your original question, Rich, if it's so hard to go up market and that's not working, maybe we are a SMB company. That's okay. That's okay. It doesn't mean we failed. It means that there's a lot of value seen by these smaller companies. Maybe we're not going to sell $1 million deals. That's okay. But we can go sell $1 million by selling to SMB. And that was one last point, is that was always the argument. There would be AEs who would say, yeah, well, I'm closing $25,000, $50,000 deals. And the AEs on the labs team would say, yeah, but I closed 75 grand last month. You closed 50 in the last quarter over 1 deal. I closed 25 transactions last month for 75 G's, or 10 transactions, whatever. And the thought, the thinking had to change, because the thinking is, I once talked to the guy who bought Double Bubble Gum. You remember Double Bubble Gum? Right? With the little comic in it, penny candy. The guy's a multi-millionaire from that gum. It's all about margins.
So in your first 12 months at CommerceBear, you achieved 10x revenue growth. Phenomenal growth, obviously. How did you make that happen? What were the learnings and takeaways? And hopefully people could replicate that.
Yeah. I actually don't like that stat, Rich, because I think we could have done it faster. So it is the statistic, first 12 months of roll, 10x revenue, but I think we could have done it faster. If we went back in time, I would have been able to do it in half the time, I think, by pushing rhetoric a little bit more and getting a little bit more aggressive. And the markets were good in 2021, if you remember that as well. Yeah, so when it comes to a company replicating that, again, you need to have a playbook. I think also too is, if I look back in retrospect of like, how could I have done it quicker? I think you have to be a little bit less fearful of things not going well. And I almost think about, you're riding a mountain bike up a mountain. It's like you don't have to go in a straight line. So, if you feel like you have to go in a straight line, you have to go slow, right? It's okay to go fast and kind of veer off to the side with these small little failures, because they are learnings, and you're going to learn as you go, and you have to just stay nimble and pivot. I think the other thing that I would recommend is don't look at anything as gospel, even your own playbook and methodology. If something all of a sudden isn't working, you're collecting data on it, change it. We had, and I'll give you one example of that, Rich. When I joined CommerceBear, we were really monetized around taking a sales commission of the product that we help move, the product that we help sell for our customer. The rhetoric at the time was that this is great for the business, as well as this is really awesome for our customers. They have skin in the game. They have little upfront cost. They're going to love it. Took it to market, and we started losing some deals because of it, because some of these companies were already doing millions of dollars online, and they're like, why the hell would we give you a fraction of a percent of that? I had to fight a bit of an uphill battle internally in getting all stakeholders involved to finally see the light that maybe this isn't right for our customer. We started to remove it on our enterprise deals, and we started to sell large deals really quickly. They loved it because it's a set cost, and psychologically, when they took it to their leader and said, this is going to cost us $5,000 a month US, but they don't take a percent, that to a president of a company in 2021 and 2022 and 2023, they go, okay, it's cheaper than us hiring somebody to help you, Rich. I like it. It's better than when you asked me out for $100,000 to go hire an associate to help you out, right? But when we said, hey, this is $9.99 a month, but we're going to take 2% of your sales, president would be like, get out of my office. And again, like that was just us being nimble as a business to take our theories and then go, okay, maybe it's not working. And instead of burning another 12 months trying to sell the same package, we just figured out a way to be able to cover our margins, grow our business financially, but make a pricing package that is causes less friction for our buyer.
So honestly, I think we could speak probably for another hour. So I'm going to skip a couple of the questions in here. But what advice do you have for up and coming sales professionals or startups who are trying to build out their own sales teams and strategies?
For individuals or for businesses?
I think both. So in an individual, so you've got somebody who is in a probably tenured, maybe a year, maybe two. They're in a sales role. They're starting to ramp up their career. What advice do you have for them? But then also for like a startup, what advice do you have for a startup that is starting to push into their sales motion?
I think for the individual, everybody wants to read all the sales books, right? And they think that that's like going to move it forward. I'm going to read another sales book, I think for the individual, understanding how your business works, like truly understanding how your business works, money in, money out. Like, and I go back to when a company raises money, like in the software space, a lot of people go, oh, now we have so much money, everyone's going to get raises this May. It's like, you have to go understand why that is not the case. So understand software as a business and how that works and is monetized and what it means for investments and shares and options and all that different stuff. But then most importantly, you have to go and understand who you're selling to, their business, their world. You have to understand, like in our case, selling to furniture manufacturers, you have to understand what it's like to be a furniture manufacturer, what their overhead looks like, how much product do they typically hold. When you have to understand the true implications of when the port was clogged up for miles in Los Angeles, what that truly meant to the industry. You got to go understand that stuff. So if you, whatever industry you're in, software selling to everybody now, dental, construction, all this stuff, you want to take the next step, you got to stop reading the next sales book and go figure out your industry. Go buy a flight on your own dime. Don't ask your boss for it. Go buy a flight in a hotel, probably cost you $1,500, if that, or drive to that customer that you sold to, that you had a really good relationship with, and say, I'd like to come down, visit, see your facility, whether they're in manufacturing, dental, whatever. I want to come see it, spend a day there. I'd like to learn.
I
Vast
love that.
majority of your deals that you've closed in whatever industry would be like, I'd love that, Rich. I'll take you for dinner. You can meet the family.
It comes back to the point that we were talking about before, is like the human element within that. Because I guarantee if you do that, not only do you get the insight from knowing more about that industry and their business, they will refer you on to more business and almost guarantee it.
Big time. That's one thing that we identified as well, that we're not doing very well as a sales team, because we are focused so much on this emotional sale that is so well aligned to say, Rich, if it's not CommerceBear, that's fine. But with everything we have uncovered, you have to tell me what you're doing to fix this. Because me and you can't just walk away from each other. But if you tell me that it's another tool, or you're going to hire somebody, or you're going to promote somebody to solve this problem for you, that's great. But let's do something, my guy. When we align with our prospects like that, a lot of times, whether the deal closes or not, they're so thankful that we took that approach, that it's about them, not about us. And one of the things we all identified as a sales team yesterday is like, we got to be asking for referrals at the end of this game. Because these people at the end even go like, we've identified all these things with our business. We're not going to buy CommerceBear right now because we have to fix these things now before we buy you. But I want to thank you so much for helping us do that. Some of them are so thankful, and they almost feel bad that they wasted our time because they're not buying. They didn't waste our time. But that's where we need to be like going, hey, Rich, we got to the end of it. That's awesome. But who can I talk to, my man? You're well integrated in the space. Help me out. Build my book.
I like that. All right, last question, then I'll let you go. What's your biggest career fuck up to date?
Yeah, biggest career fuck up to date. I think going back to Vidyard, when we did go down market, the biggest learning that I had, I don't ever call it a fuck up, but I guess it is a lot of my friends refer to me as a golden retriever. They're like, you're up for everything. You've always got this energy, and it's like, where are we going now? Where are we going now? But I'm also a husky in the sense that I never back down from a fight, and I've gotten better at that. But when we took Vidyard down market, there was a lot of people who had their feathers ruffled. A lot of people on the enterprise sales team, from sales leaders to sales directors, like, they were not happy. And like a husky, I didn't back down from that fight. What I should have done, and this is now how I look at leadership, is I should have pulled them in to show them what we were doing, rather than matching their level of contest and their level of contempt, which was my innate reaction. But when I look at my biggest career fuck up, that was it. Because had I known what I know now, which is to lead with influence, and even take some of these people, when I was a brand new sales manager, go to the sales director who was so highly tenured and say, hey, let's you and I go for a beer and talk about how this can be great for both of us and both of our teams. That would have been the right move, rather than just being quiet, put my head down and said, I'll show you with numbers that I'm right. And that's what I did. That's the fuck up.
I like it. All right. I lied. Last question. Who should I speak to next?
I think you got to get Rob on here. I know you guys are close, but I personally, that's for my own advantage. I think Rob has so much knowledge around partnerships. And again, hot topic in the industry right now. I'm going to one day hire Rob. I got to get him onto a team, because working with him is money. He helped me make so much money and drive so much money for Vidyard, again, how we met. So I think Rob is the guy. He's also, whenever you sit down with him, you always learn something.
I think there will be a very long line of people who want him on their team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to build a role for him that I can offer him at some point.
So am I.
All right, Evan. Thanks for being up for doing the 6 sessions with me. If anybody wants to follow up with you or get in touch about CommerceBear, how do you want them to connect?
Yeah, my LinkedIn is the best way to connect. The only thing I ask, because it's getting hectic in there, is tell me your intentions. And I think that's something we all need to focus on, is when you reach out to somebody, tell me exactly what you're hoping to do. Asking for 5 minutes just isn't working anymore. So tell me what you're hoping to discuss, and I'd be happy to connect with you.
I like it. All right, Evan, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we'll catch up in person again soon.
Likewise, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, dude. See you later.
Take care.